What's up YouTube, this is Dennis Benuta for tutorials.eu. In this video you will learn about AI in video games. Some amazing and not so amazing examples and what we can learn from them. If we think about artificial intelligence in video games, we usually think about NPC enemies. In titles like, let's say, Batman Arkham Knights, Metal Gear Solid, the alien species from Halo, or for some of you, even the original Fear game, featuring innovative systems that made the AI feel fun and truly engaging to play against. But what actually is AI in video games? Well, AI, or artificial intelligence, refers to the simulation of human intelligence in machines that are programmed to think like humans and mimic their actions. Thanks, Investopedia. But that's not necessarily the case in video games. I don't want to say that we won't have near human AI in video games sometime in the future and that it won't be awesome, but in most cases you don't need this to simulate a bandit's reaction to an arrow flying past them, and your PC wouldn't like that either, by the way. In most cases it's actually quite simple. If this, then that cases. Simple actions like, if player is in radius, then shoot. Not really what you would describe as intelligent. There is no real reaction in them, but more like the performing of actions once a specific condition is met. So what would we need to do then to get at least something that acts like an AI? Well, in this case, making them more intelligent would just mean adding more conditions, literally. Shooting the player if he gets in range is nice, but what if he's behind cover? Well, make the NPC try to walk around cover to be able to shoot him again. Because just shooting the cover wouldn't be very smart if you ask me. What if the player jumped down a cliff because he has some sort of a glider? Just keep following him to your death? Well, you would want the NPC to stay on the cliff edge and shoot him from there, or try to find a new path to reach him. If the player was detected and then lost, during the next few seconds, don't just patrol, but actually search the player. All those little tweaks and additional conditions make an AI feel as if it actually were intelligent. But in reality, it's still just following orders. Like, just imagine if an NPC was programmed to find the player tag and then placing the player in front of him without that tag. Will he recognize the player because he remembered how the player looked from previous encounters? No, if there's no tag, there's no player. So what does that mean for a video game AI? Is it a wrongly used term? Is there no such thing as an AI in games? Well, not necessarily. I mean, there may be better terms to describe it than AI, but you really prefer calling it set of fixed conditions instead of AI? Well, doesn't really roll off the tongue that easily, I would say. And to be honest, every now and then these fixed conditions can give us players near real AI experiences. Like those examples where they present a sense of learning, even if it's not real learning. Like when in Metal Gear Solid 5 enemies started wearing helmets when the players headshotted them too often, or when competing NPC drivers in racing games speed up or slow down to stay close to the player, as we discussed in our previous video about game difficulty. That's what is called dynamic difficulty adjustment, also called DDA. Simply put, the enemy learns from your performance or actions and adjusts itself to that. But isn't that basically learning? Wouldn't that make it a true AI? And even though that is pretty close to one, it's still just following orders. There's no conclusion that the NPC has gotten to. No new or emergent behaviors in the response to the player's action. But just an if player headshots number high, up the chance for spawning with helmets. Well, that's mostly just it. But still, especially with this, engaging with enemies can feel sometimes really good and fun and really take the monotony out of a game. Because when you can use the same strategy for every single enemy, it can get really boring after a while. Then we see games like the original Halo, for example. Bungie, back in 2001, prepared a test where two different machines had the exact same game with the exact same AI, but on one side enemies had low health and low damage, and on the other side high health and high damage. Then after a quick play session, asked the participants if they thought that the AI felt intelligent. The numbers of players that said they did went from 8% all the way to 43% after the stats increase. That doesn't mean that sponging your enemies is the way to go though, but more like that there is more to intelligent feeling NPCs in video games than just pure intelligence. So sometimes with the right condition sets, we can give the illusion of true AI. The conditions can be constant counters to the player, where it learns how to beat him with every interaction. But sometimes they can be features that give the player an advantage and help him to win or at least have an easier time trying. What do I mean by that? Well, imagine you build your AI so it knows where your player is at all times, and as soon as he spawns, shoot, and dead. Game over. That wouldn't make an AI feel smart, but more than anything, let its true self shine through. An order-following machine. And well, that would obviously make the game feel really unfair as well. Some of you may have heard about this in the context of game feel or game difficulty, as we mentioned before. Almost like when you play chess against your younger sibling. I think you could most certainly easily beat him or her at chess without a chance for them to even get near winning. But there wouldn't be any fun in that. Just constantly losing and being completely powerless to change the outcome. Just making them storm out, being frustrated because they thought that it was totally unfair. You don't want that to be you while playing your favorite game, do you? Quick pause. So I built this complete Unity masterclass course in which you are going to learn how to build real games and how to build them from scratch. So you're going to learn how to build a platformer game, how to build a Space Invaders clone, how to build a Fruit Ninjas clone and optimize it for mobile and export it for mobile as well, how to build a first-person shooter game, and finally how to build a tycoon game similar to Adventurist, which is an endless game. So if you want to become a real game developer, definitely check out the course. You can find the link in the description and you will get the course with a huge discount, so don't hesitate, as you will not only get the course, but you will also get it in a structured manner with all of the code as well as a Q&A section with a 5-star support. So get the course now. I hope to see you there. For example, are you making enemies kill you as soon as you leave cover? Better to be more like Uncharted, where they start with a 0% chance of hitting you at the beginning, so to give you time to shoot them first. Are you making NPC racers drive perfect lines at perfect speeds? Instead, make them act like in Mario Kart, where AI racers' performance varies with the player. Otherwise, it would be unfair. It would feel fake and mechanical, not like something an actual human being would do. With that, you can see how closely related game difficulty and AI really are, right? This also means that even though that may sound counterintuitive, you can't make NPCs completely unpredictable either. But wait, isn't that what it means to be an AI? Interpret actions and build a reaction through a process similar to real logical thinking, like a real AI? Well, yes, but like said, this is not necessary here. Plopping a mine in front of an NPC and throwing a grenade behind him because you know he will dodge the grenade and fall right into the mine can sometimes be way more fun, since it lets you plan and create strategies, and you can even make an AI feel more correct. Like, your thought process is that the AI knows about the grenade, but they may not know about it, the mine. So jumping right into it is a plausible outcome. Now, giving the NPC certain randomness about where he is going to dodge towards to maybe missing the mine could then give him a feel of realism. Like, yes, all of them know to dodge a grenade. They learned that, well, because it's obvious, but they aren't all the same exact person. So they may jump in different directions or maybe even sometimes get blown up by the grenade. Giving them some sort of predictability could not only improve the fun, but also the illusion of real AI. But no matter how hard you try, there's always something that separates an AI from an actual player. You as a player always feel a little out of place, different from the rest of the NPCs, if that makes sense. While you would naturally hide behind a wall to take cover, run to a health regeneration device to top up your health points, target environmental objects like those typical red barrels to blow several enemies up at once, or even jump up something to get a better view or escape ground critters. That usually just doesn't happen with NPCs, but it could. Imagine preparing an AI to seek cover behind objects if in a state of reloading like in Fallout, or run towards health dispensers when low health, like in Bioshock, or just straight up picking up, throwing a barrel towards you and kicking grenades away, like in Zelda Breath of the Wild. Making them interact with the environment the way you would interact with it is what makes them feel less static and more alive. Or don't make them so player-centered. I know the game is about you and these NPCs just existing because of you, but have you ever seen one of those videos about following an NPC through their whole day in Red Dead Redemption 2? Even though the player has nothing to do with them and doesn't interact with them once, they just go about their lives. Wake up, eat, get to work, go to the tavern, back home, sleep, start over. Sometimes even slightly changing their routine. That's what's called a radiant AI. And all this just happens in the background. And yes, those are just a more advanced set of if statements. But doesn't it feel real? Well, like watching an actual person go about their day? Well, I know that this might, for some cases, be a bit overkill. Like, we don't need a complete daily routine for zombies in an apocalypse game. Nor do we necessarily need to know what a xenomorph does when he's bored and doesn't find a player to rip apart. But does this make a story-based sandbox game feel immersive? I almost want to buy a house and go about my own routine side by side with that NPC. But even spectacular things like these can go too far. Take, for example, Oblivion. Yes, the 2006 title from Bethesda. Before launch, a fairly complex Radiant AI system was being tested. NPCs would need to eat, sleep and work, and would even, if hungry and no food nor money was in their inventory, steal food from vending stands and other NPCs. This can be a nice touch to the game world, but obviously, with such an in-depth AI system, a lot of things can go wrong. Like Emil Pagliarulo, design director at Bethesda Game Studios, once said, the system had to be strongly toned down on release, since like in one of the examples, situations could occur where a skooma selling character, which is a sort of a drug in this universe, would be constantly killed by NPCs addicted to it once they run out of money, since they were programmed to need skooma. If they didn't have any money left, they would look for the one selling it and kill him so they could steal it from him. Now, every time a mission started that involved this character, he would always just be laying dead on the ground and you could not do anything about it. So this can even turn the game into an empty wasteland and make it unplayable when NPCs just kept attacking each other over arguments in cities. Well, with great power comes great responsibility, I guess. So, to conclude, what then is video game AI really? Well, simply put, a cleverly put together illusion of real intelligence, mostly meant to give the player the best possible gameplay and experience. Do you want to learn about how to actually make one, or are you interested in game development as a whole? Then make sure to check out our Unity and C# Game Developer Masterclass. You can find the link in the description down below. And now also make sure to hit the like button if you liked the video and also hit the subscribe button.